Okay, it should be recording. Perfect. Wonderful. Okay, there's more people joining. Well, first off, good afternoon and good evening to those in joining us from India. I think that's our definitely most of us are joining us from. My name is Colton. I am part of Sontsa Initiative, currently an advisor, but formerly one of the co-founders. We're super excited to have Tenzing here for one of our higher ed series speaker series. Just a quick note about our higher ed speaker series. It essentially is something that we've been doing since 2024, trying to highlight Tibetans in our community who are pursuing, mostly at this moment, graduate programs across the world. Most have been from the States, but we have other folks, in this case, I think Yangdon from Oxford and UK, trying to create that awareness about programs that exist, as well as just getting the personal journey from individuals who have navigated something many of us haven't. And we want to create that space for the listeners who are interested in learning, as well as for Tenzing and others to share their knowledge and wisdom of the process that they have been to, and also kind of highlight the trailblazing aspect of those individuals, including Yangdon, who have pursued this journey on their own, and but have learned a lot. And this session will be really valuable, hopefully, for you all to learn from her about her journey and what you might get out of it. But anyways, without further ado, I'm super excited to have Lindsay Yangdu. I'll kind of hand over the mic to you. I mean, there isn't a mic, but and then as for the format of this session, we'll let Yangdun present for her presentation part, and then followed by a quick moderated session of questions that I have prepared, and followed by a Q&A. But depending on timing, we can switch things around, but I'll let Yangdun go ahead. And if you have any questions throughout, anyone here, please feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll try to answer them at the end or throughout as Yangdun sees it fit. Perfect. I'll let you take the mic and I'll present.
Hi everyone. My name is Yangzhi, and Galden, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I remember back when I was just starting out my bachelor's and I heard about Sontsa Initiative and all the work that Sontsa Initiative was doing. And at the time, I was, you know, just like you guys, thinking about applying abroad. And now I'm here, as a speaker. So this is really, really amazing. And I want to say thank you to all 21 of you who have taken up the time to, be here and spend an hour in this webinar. And I really hope that through this session, you'll be able to take away some useful, practical tips that can help you in your applications for a master's abroad. Um, okay, let me just refer to my notes because I need my notes. All right, next slide, please. So let me first go over, okay, before I just begin, like, I'll just say something in Tibetan because I know that there's like few people here who are also Tibetan. 정말 뜻실래 님ing 라틴지 양주이 아니 같은다 University of Oxford tolobla luptuji 아니 nge degree ming MSc in Refugee and Forced Migration Studies 아니 ngat dela Academic Futures Scholarship gigangle. So the reason why I thought that maybe I should carry out this webinar in English is because there are also like some non-Tibetan speakers, and so I thought it would be more inclusive. However, if you want me to repeat anything, or if something's not clear, please feel free to let me know and we can go over it again. Also, please feel free to like reach me out on my email. I have that mentioned in the end of the slide. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin. So first of all, here is going to be the content, like how, how this webinar is going to go. First of all, I'll be talking about my journey and about me and my journey to Oxford. And then I'll be talking about the application itself, my experience. And then the way I've divided it is in two phases. So the first phase is, the research aspect, like before you actually begin applying, when you're just researching about different programs. And then in this section, I'll also be talking about the Academic Future Scholarship, which is an Oxford scholarship, and I'll be talking a bit about that. And then the second phase is the applying itself. So I'm going to be going into the anatomy of a master's application, and I'll be talking a bit about three aspects of a master's application, which specifically LORs, grades, and SOP. And then third, I'll be talking about some myths about applying to Oxford, which I thought they were true in my first year, but then, as I applied, I realized that that's actually not true. So we'll do some myth busting, and then fourth, we'll end with questions. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so about me, as Khaldan mentioned, or as you've also seen in the post, currently I am pursuing an MSc in Refugee and Forced Migration Studies as an academic future scholar. And my background, I graduated from bachelor's in English honors from Lady Shri Ram College, Delhi University. In 2024. And then the same year, I started a postgrad diploma in conflict transformation and peace building from LSRDU as well. And that was like 2025, which is last year. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about like my journey to Oxford and how I, got here. So I was once also like in your position, and I used to look at these people who go to these amazing universities, and I used to think, how did they do it? I really wanted to know. So in this session too, like I want to talk a little bit about my own journey and share that with you guys. So I think from my very first year during my bachelor's, I had this goal that I wanted to pursue my master's abroad, but at the time, I wasn't sure about the program, and I was also not sure about like what path I wanted to take in life. Even though I did enjoy studying literature a lot, but I didn't feel as passionate about it. And I remember at the time, I think I was 20 years old. Like, right, for context, right now I'm 22. So I was 20 years old, and I was in my second year, and I think I had like zero clue about what to do next. But instead of seeing it as a flaw or like as a threat, I think I saw it more as an opportunity, because I realized that, because I had no idea what to do next, I could do whatever I wanted. I could be whoever I wanted. And I think that at the time, I didn't think it was a big deal. But when I look back, I think this particular mindset made a lot of difference. It was the fact that I was not putting myself like in a box. And at the time, like I didn't, so I decided that, okay, I'm not going to think too much about the big picture. I'm just going to do whatever seems interesting to me, and I'm not going to think like if I'm the right type. I'm just going to do whatever. So here, like in the presentation here, I just have like a little path that you can see here. So I've talked about, the first thing is like I came across this opportunity to do like a research excursion in like South India. And I applied for that, and I got in. And this was like my first time traveling alone all the way to South India. And I also like missed my lectures for that, by the way. And I think this experience was really pivotal, because it really helped me understand about like my own legal status as a stateless person. So hold on. I'm just gonna okay. So that research excursion was a really pivotal experience for me, and I learned something about myself, like about my legal status. And I came to know that I was like a stateless person by reading the academic articles that were provided to the cohort. And the thing is that growing up, I think I had some idea about like my legal status, but it was never like super clear to me, you know. And then secondly, I came across RSC Pathways, which is basically it's an online program facilitated by Oxford in refugee and forced migration studies, which is the discipline that I'm doing right now, and it's actually inspired by by the MSc program that I'm doing right now. And this program, it helped me understand what the program was actually about. And as I studied this program, I realized that my perception of forced migration was very limited to my experience as a Tibetan. And through the program, I was able to perceive forced migration from different angles. And that's when I decided that, okay, I'm going to apply for this master's. And the third experience was I also volunteered at a film festival, which was completely very spontaneous because I wasn't a film student. I had no intention of working in the film industry, but I still applied for it because I was curious about, how a film festival is like behind the scenes. And I also like attended a bunch of conferences. So the reason why I talked about this trajectory is to really stress on the importance of spontaneity. And I think that it's sometimes like if you're too over attached to labels, like labels such as, okay, I'm studying this and no, this is who I am, it can really keep you away from, opportunities that can expose you to like a whole new world. So here I will just give a few tips. First of all, seek exposure, do new things, try out new things that you've never done before, talk to people from like different backgrounds, and don't limit yourself to like your classroom or your college. Sometimes the opportunities that you can get from your college or classroom can be limited. So I would suggest use internet and social media efficiently. And thirdly, never think that you're not the type. If you even have like a sliver of curiosity about something, pursue it. And don't be too attached to labels. And pursue your curiosities, even if they may feel a bit foreign at first. Pursue it. Yeah, and I think that looking back, the reason why I've said connecting the dots is because looking back, you know none of these, I didn't think that any of these decisions was drawing me closer to Oxford. But looking back, I think because even I try to think back, and I think, okay, what was the specific event that solidified me being here? What was a specific decision or specific moment in my past that made it sure that I would end up here? But I think looking back, there's no one decision, or there's no single decision or single choice. It was a series of decisions that added up to lead me here. So that was how I would sort of think about my trajectory and how I ended up here. I really stress on the importance of um, seeking out new opportunities and not putting yourself in a box. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Now we are going into the next section, which is the application itself. So the first time I applied to this program, the MSc in RFMS, was in January 2024. And by March, I received an email about my rejection. And needless to say, I was not surprised. I was in my final year at the time at LSR, and I only applied to Oxford and nowhere else. And looking back, I don't think I was really ready at the time. Like it was not the right time for me. And I knew, and I deep down, I knew it too. And I had not given my 100%. And I think a part of me was also scared that, okay, what if I get accepted? Like I'm going to have to commit. But I decided to apply again the next year. And that's why I think sometimes you have to see rejection as redirection instead of something bad, you know. So I applied again the next year, and a lot of program deadlines were either in December or January. So for reference, I applied to 6 schools and I got into all of them. They were Oxford, SOAS, Trinity College Dublin, University College Dublin, Geneva Graduate Institute, which is IHED in Switzerland, and University of Glasgow. For me, Oxford was the most tedious application. There were a lot of things that they needed to that needed to be submitted. Okay, next phase. Okay, research. Okay, so now I would now we're getting into like the actual application. I would divide the process of application into two phases. So phase one is research, and phase two is the actual applying. So here you can see. So this is like the very first stage. Okay, and at this point, you want to shortlist programs, you want to shortlist scholarships, and so at this point, you want to ask yourself certain questions. Questions like, why do I wish to do a master's degree? What program do I want to do? And which university do I want to study at? And which country do I want to study in? So these are all important questions that you do want to consider. And I want to talk a little bit about like why I chose to study in the UK. And I think there were two main reasons. First of all, my field of choice, which was forced migration studies, was widely taught in the UK compared to other countries. And secondly, I also had a very strong desire to pursue refugee and forced migration studies at Oxford because of the program and the professors. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so one very important tip that I will give is at this stage, towards the end of your research, use a spreadsheet because you will forget deadlines. Even like for one program, you might apply for like 3 or 4 scholarships. So I really want to stress on, having a spreadsheet. Okay, so in the slide here, sorry, I just had my breakfast. I'm just feeling a bit. Okay. In the slide here, you can see that I have, this is like my tracker, my application tracker. So you can see the 6 schools I applied to, and it's a very thorough spreadsheet. And the best thing about this spreadsheet is that you write down your deadline, and then it'll tell you that, okay, only these many days are left. Okay. And this spreadsheet was actually provided by Project Edu Access. So Project Edu Access, they're like similar to Sontsa Initiative. They're like how do I put it? You know, Project Edu Access, they provide support to students from marginalized backgrounds in India. They democratize access to information for studying abroad, and they have a lot of resources that you should check out. And you'll see below this picture, I've also had a link to the public spreadsheet. So if you click on this link, you'll have your own template, and in that template, you'll be able to like write down, all the universities you want to apply to, and what scholarships you want to apply to. And then there's also like a tab in which they have like all the resources. So they have very good resources on what country to apply to, what how to apply for this scholarship. So it's very thorough, and I would definitely recommend you to check it out. It'll definitely be more expansive, than the advice that I can give. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay. Yeah. So another question that comes up is what is a good number of programs to apply to? And this is the same question I had too. So some people told me, okay, Yangdon, you should apply for 7 programs. And then some people told me, actually, 3 programs is a good number. But I think at the end, towards like now that I've gone through the process, I think it really depends on you. I think it's really up to you. Like, yes, you want to keep your options open and broad, but you also really want to think that, would I really go here? Like, do they have the funding? So I think that is an important thing. It's really up to you, like what programs, because for me, I applied to 6 programs, but my first list was like 10 programs, but I realized that, it was not like viable. So in the end, I just ended up applying to 6 programs. So yeah, that is one thing I wanted to cover. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next section is about like how to search for scholarships. And one tip that I will give is don't wait, especially for UK, don't wait until you get the offer to start looking for scholarships. Right at the first phase, like when you're even considering that, oh, I want to study abroad. This is where you want to start looking for scholarships too. You want to do both the things together at the same time. You don't want to wait, okay? And you might be wondering, okay, where do I search for scholarships? Well, you can use Google, and you can also ask people, ask your alumni, ask people in your college, your friends. Third, as I said, you should definitely check out the resources of Project Edu Access. They have these sessions where, the scholars themselves who have received a scholarship, whether it's like the Rhodes or Chevening or Felix, they come up and, they give the webinars and they talk about how they went about it. So I think that's very helpful. And fourth, there's also on Oxford's website, there's a scholarship tool, and it's a very thorough list. There are internal scholarships and also external scholarships that you should check out on that list. And um, fifth is sanctuary scholarships, which is, I think, not as commonly known. And this is for those people who have been affected by, who come from displaced backgrounds. Like if you're stateless, if you have like a yellow book or like an RC, so I think there in the UK, there are like a lot of sanctuary universities. Like for instance, University of Oxford is a sanctuary university, University of Glasgow, and even KCL. They have these specific scholarships for people who have been impacted by displacement. So you want to look at those. You definitely want to check those out. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next thing I thought I'll talk a bit about like the scholarship that I am on. So the scholarship that I am on is called the Academic Futures Scholarship. So this scholarship, it covers the tuition, living costs, and the visa fee, and it's an Oxford scholarship to pursue a master's or a DPhil at Oxford, which is basically PhD at Oxford. They have different names here. So there are different streams in this scholarship, and the stream that I am on is the refugee stream, and it's for people who have been impacted by displacement, people who come from displaced backgrounds, including stateless individuals. And the thing about this scholarship is that you will only receive the application form if you get the offer, or like after you get the offer, right? So you apply, and then when you're applying, you there's like a checkbox on your application saying like refugee, and you click on that and you just apply, and then in March you get your offer. So and then around April you'll get an email saying that, okay, apply for, here's the application form to this scholarship, since you mentioned that you have been impacted by displacement. So and then you fill that form out. The key question that they ask is, why are you applying for the scholarship, and how will studying at Oxford enable you to redress barriers you have faced or are facing in progressing your application? So this is a key question. And you know and the evaluation is basically done on not just this form, but the evaluation is done on the previous application itself that you submitted in January. So they look at both to evaluate, your to evaluate your application. And one tip that I would give for this is to be transparent. So me personally, I mean, I wasn't born in Tibet, and I was born in India. I was born and raised in India. And I was very transparent about that in my application, about my background and everything. And I think I would advise you to do that as well. Like, being transparent is important. And I think the thing is that their definition, the way they define refugee is actually quite broad, and it also includes people like from different displaced backgrounds, including stateless individuals. So that is one note I wanted to say. And then next slide, please. Okay, so next we have phase 2, which is the applying. Now this is when you're actually beginning the application. Okay, so I have like a little sketch drawn here. It's the anatomy of a master's application. So I would say in total there is like 5 main components of a master's application: your grades, your CV, the LORs, the SOP, and the writing samples. Okay, and okay, next slide, please. And I'll just go into like each of these. First is letters of recommendation. Now, LOR is a tough nut to crack. It can be a bit tricky to, get the right LORs. So I would say for Oxford, I had to submit like 3 letters of recommendation. The way I see LORs is like, I kind of see LOR is like a vouch, right? So in your application, like you're writing these things, like in your SOP, you're writing these things that, okay, this is what I am, this is this is why I deserve to be there, And LOR is like a professor vouching for you that, oh, what they said is true. So, and I think, so different professors, they have different policies, and it's always best to ask your professor for an LOR as early as possible. In my experience, if you are active in class, a professor is more likely to write you an LOR, honestly. And the thing is, a professor may not write you an LOR if they're already recommending another student, to like the same university, say like maybe, I don't think it'll be like for the same university, but sometimes if somebody else already asked the professor, like if they're applying for the same scholarship as you or like same program as you, then the professor may say, actually, I'm already recommending this student, so I can't recommend you. So that's why it's good to ask as early as possible. Second tip I'll give you is send an information package. Like when the professor agrees, send them an information package, send them your grades, your projects or assignments that you did with them, and the SOP draft, your CV. That's very important. And next, I would say always refer to your program website for the LOR requirements. Essentially, I would say, like for my program, what the admissions committee wanted to know best is, can the student handle the academic load? Like this program is academically rigorous. We want to know what you think. Like this, can the student handle it? So you really want your referee, like your professor, to comment on your research potential, on your academic potential, on your reading and writing skills. Okay. Next slide, please. So next slide, so the next phase, we're going to talk about grades, okay? And now I want to talk about this one thing is, how high should my grades be for Oxford? Now, having good grades is good, okay? It can give you a competitive advantage, especially for scholarships like Clarendon. They specifically look for, like people with good grades, like high grades is very important. However, I would say Oxford is not just a place for like valedictorians, and about the question, how high should my grades be? Now, for my application for the program that I am on, the minimum grade requirement was a upper second class honors degree. Okay, now that is confusing, I know, but they have like very clear instructions. Like if you just go on the website, you'll see what is the requirement for like applicants from India, and they say that it says if you're like if you're on a 3-year bachelor's program, then 65% is the minimum. So 65%, it's for prestigious universities, and 70% for other. Okay, so 65% would be around 6.84 CGPA. So I believe you do need to have above 6.84 CGPA. Okay, I think that honestly, in my opinion, I think as long as like it's above the minimum, you have a chance. Okay, so don't discount yourself, thinking that, okay, just because I don't have the grades, there's no chance. Like you do need to cross the threshold, though. That's important. Next question is, what do I do if my grades are barely above the minimum? Okay, so for this tip, I think I would say that if your grades are not supporting, okay, one tip I'll give you is that, so if you're in your third year, see if you can raise your grades. Okay, if you're in your third year, and like see if you can sit for an exam again to raise your grades. Okay, like to make it go higher. Like maybe in your second year there was some course in which you got a C, you can easily raise it up to A if you work hard. I would say, like for grades, if your grades are like not the highest, you can make your application really strong enough to get a scholarship, by focusing on other things like your SOP or your LORs, right? One tip I will give you for LOR is that, if you have like an arc, right? Let's say if there's like an upward arc in your applications, like for example, say in your first year you did not do so well, but in your second year you improved significantly, that is amazing. You want your professor to write about that, because what the professors on the admissions committee want to see is, they want to see how you handle challenges. Okay, how do you handle difficult circumstances, and how do you sort of bounce back from that, right? So it's an opportunity for you to talk about that skill. And I think there's also a section on difficult circumstances. So if because of family circumstances your grades were affected, there's a section where you can write that too. Okay. Next slide, please. Now we have the SOPs, okay? So for SOP, the approach that I took was I took a chronological, forward-looking approach. Um, what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about, like, as I said, there were specific events that led me up to here, that led me to, pursue this program. So I took like this chronological approach, and I was very forward-looking in my approach in the sense that I didn't just talk about, oh, I did this, I did that in the past, but I talked about what I'm going to do with the degree, like what I'm going to do during the degree and what I'm going to do after the degree. So that is important. And I also demonstrated, like, I made sure that I conveyed that I understood what the center's value is. So my program is associated with the Refugee Study Center here at Oxford, and they existed before the program. So, and they have like this, they have these like specific missions and values that they work on. So I showed that I understand those values, right? And I also made sure to like maintain a good balance between personal and academic. And second tip is, okay, some tips I'll give is, first of all, an SOP is not one size fits all. So I will be sharing some paragraphs from my SOP in like later slides. But I want to say that just because I did it this way doesn't mean that, like just because maybe this worked for me doesn't mean that it would work for you. So I want to say an SOP is something that in a lot of ways I see it as something like really personal. So I want to say it's not like a one size fits all, but I will share like my approach and like what I did, so that could help you. Okay, second thing I want to say is start early. Second tip is starting early. So the SOP that I submitted to Oxford was my third draft, and my first draft was just all bullet points. And I think that is like the resistance that you have to overcome, right? And bullet points can be great to overcome that resistance. And third is do in-depth research. Okay. Right, next slide, please. So this is my first paragraph of my statement of purpose. I'm just going to read it out. Okay. So it goes like this. I have lived most of my life ignorant of my legal status. Growing up as a diasporic Tibetan in India, I would often overhear about the Green Book and the Yellow Book. My interest in Tibetan culture was minimal during my early years, but that changed in 2023 when I joined a research excursion to Belakop, a Tibetan settlement in South India. After the pre-field work, which consisted of secondary research and workshops on field methods, we conducted surveys and interviews with the local residents, through which we found that a majority of them were either stateless or did not possess adequate identity documents. And as I learned more about the generational nature of statelessness within my community, the purpose of those past documents became clear to me. My green book was proof of citizenship to an unrecognized government, and my yellow book was an alien's passport for the non-citizens of India. Neither a refugee nor a citizen, I was situated within an uncomfortable space in between called statelessness. But this realization made me feel empowered rather than victimized, because I was no longer within the dark cave of ignorance. I wanted to learn more about not just my community, but also how other communities worldwide had experienced forced migration. This pursuit led me to the Refugee Studies Center's RSC Pathways program. Now, here, what I've done is that I have started the very first line of this essay with a hook, right? So you're essentially like an author and you're drawing the reader in, and the reader wants to know, okay, what is their legal status, so it's an interesting way to start the essay. And I think a hook sentence can sometimes be a bit of a risk, because technically in your first paragraph you want to be very direct. You want to say that, okay, I am applying to this program at this university because of this, so you want to be direct, which is not the approach that I took. I did that in the second paragraph. I mentioned in my second paragraph that I want to apply to, the MSc in RFMS at Oxford. But I just wanted to like do something different, and I used the hook sentence to do that. And the second red highlighted part, which I've mentioned, is here I have introduced the first pivotal moment, right, which shaped my decision to apply. And I also, through this, I also demonstrated that I have research experience, which is important for an MSc, because at Oxford you have like, so an MSc doesn't mean like STEM. It means that it's called an MSc because we have to submit a dissertation, and there's also compulsory research methods, right? So I have like my quantitative research methods course, and I have a qualitative research methods course, and they both are like core papers. So it is like it is a taught master's, but it has an emphasis on research. That's why it's called an MSc. And for such MSc programs, if you can demonstrate that you have some research experience, that works out in your favor. And lastly, the end of this paragraph, I ended it by introducing the second narrative pillar, which is which is like doing the RC pathways, which really made me want to like do this program. Next paragraph, please. Okay. Okay, so then let me just read this out. RC Pathways expanded my perspective to help me perceive forced migration through a global lens. I was introduced to the causes, consequences, and responses to forced displacement, as well as the different approaches to studying forced migration. I thoroughly enjoyed studying the module on anthropology for its exploration of the oneness and diversity of humanity. The discipline of anthropology is central to the teaching of the MSc in Refugee and Forced Migration Studies at Oxford since, wait, tea break. Sorry, my throat is dry. At Oxford, since Dr. Barbara Harrell-Bond, the pioneering founder of the Refugee Studies Center, was herself a social anthropologist. While reading the MSc course, I am eager to pursue anthropology of forced migration, taught by Professor Now, who has conducted extensive research on the economic lives of refugees in East Africa. As an aspiring field practitioner, I could learn a lot from him about ethnographic field methods. Furthermore, I'm interested in the options course on education uncertainty taught by Professor Hiba Salem, since I myself am a product of such an education and also because I envision my future role in society as that of an educator. I intend to build further upon my interest in postcolonial theory through the options course on postcolonial borders and forced migration taught by Professor Uttara Shahani, who has done substantial research on partition and the Sindhi diaspora. While pursuing RC pathways, I noticed an evident research gap about Tibetan refugees in the field of forced migration studies. At Oxford, I intend to contribute towards closing this gap through my thesis, which would focus on the intergenerational effects of forced migration on the Tibetan diaspora in India. Using an anthropological approach, I am interested in exploring how concepts of Tibetan identity and culture have evolved or stagnated in exile. Okay. Now, this is very relevant to the information on the website. So I have mentioned exactly all the things that they wanted me to mention. So they mentioned on their website that we want you to talk about what options course you want to take, what thesis you want to do, even like if it's like a brief idea, what courses you're most interested in. They want to know why it's this program above all other programs. Why is it this one that you want to do the most? So that is something you want to focus on. Now, in the first line that I've highlighted here, I have explained what forced migration is. And in the course itself, this is how they described it. So I've explained that, okay, I know what you guys are teaching. Like I understand, I have some idea of, what this discipline is about. And I've mentioned that, right? In the second highlighted part, I've mentioned about, the founder of the center. I think what I really focused on in my SOP was showing that I understood the center's history, its values, like beyond just being like a master's program. What is the actual work that they were trying to do in the world, right? And last, really just I talked about what thesis I wanted to do. So I talked about, okay, what can I contribute to the field? Okay. And next slide, please. Now, this is the last section of my SOP. I have skipped a few parts, but this is the last section. And in here, like, what the highlighted section is like, from its inception, the RC scholars have used academic research to challenge dominant practices within the field and empower the voices of those who are marginalized and underrepresented through, for instance, the Forced Migration Review, previously called the Refugee Participation Network. When I was researching the program, I watched a documentary about the founder, Barbara Harrell-Bond. And in that, they mentioned that the Forced Migration Review was previously called Refugee Participation Network. So I want to demonstrate through this that you really want to show that you've done your research, that you understand what you're getting yourself into, okay? Because I think that a lot of times people make this mistake is that they talk so much about like what they've done in the past, that, oh, I worked here, I did this, I did that, that's why I deserve to be here. But I think what people don't do is that they don't talk enough about what they're going to do with the degree, what they're going to do after they graduate or during the program. And I think that is something that you do need to focus on. Next slide, please. Okay, now this is very interesting. I want to talk about some of the myths that some false beliefs that I had in my first year, and I think these are not true. So here we have myths about applying to Oxford. Okay, first of all, the application itself is expensive. Okay, so I think that for a lot of students from marginalized backgrounds, um, it's like forget about like actually studying, but like even applying itself can be a barrier because we think that okay it's really expensive, and sometimes it is expensive, but I just want to put it out there that for Oxford I didn't pay anything for my Oxford application. None of these costs, like no, I didn't pay an application fee. I didn't spend money on IELTS or GRE. I didn't spend any money on like study abroad consultants. Okay, I want to say yes, for other programs, like for some of the other programs, the application fee was expensive, but for Oxford, it wasn't. And so the way I got the fee waiver was because, so when you're applying, right, as I said, the refugee tick box that I mentioned before, if you tick on that, your application fee is waived off essentially. But even if like you're not from displaced background, what you can do is you can email the admissions committee. I think Project Edu Access also has a good template that you can use to ask for like a fee waiver. So a lot of times the good universities do that. LSE does that, KCL does that. They give out waivers, and it's always you lose nothing by sending an email. Okay. So that's the application fee. And then secondly, IELTS, GRE. I did not give an IELTS. I didn't give a GRE. They didn't need a GRE. Okay. And in the website, you'll see that they'll ask for an IELTS, but the IELTS requirement can be waived off because I did a bachelor's in English literature, right? And even if like if your bachelor's degree was in English, you may not have to give an IELTS. Okay, so you just like read the website, talk to email them, email the university, email the course, ask them, do I really need to spend money on IELTS? Okay. And I think that the investment is not just money. Like you're not just spending money to give an IELTS. You're also spending your most precious resource, which is time. On a minimum, you'll spend a month preparing for an IELTS test. That 1 month, you could use it to apply for scholarships. You could use it to apply to programs instead of like, studying for an English test. Um, Third thing is study abroad consultants. Now, this is what I think about study abroad agencies. I won't say that all of them are scams, but I would say 9 out of 10 of them are. So you want to be very careful if you are reaching out to a study abroad consultant. You want to be very careful about that. And I think you don't need a study abroad consultant. There's already so many amazing resources. I mean, amazing organizations like Sontsa Initiative and Project Edu Access, and even like the RLRH. They have a mentorship program called the Graduate Horizons. Definitely check that out if you're like from a displaced background. Um, you have amazing resources, definitely check those out. Like you don't always need to like you don't always need to like reach out to a study abroad agency. The second myth I'll say is thinking that I have to be a genius, which is just not true. You don't have to be a valedictorian to end up at Oxford. You don't have to be a genius, as I talked about in the grades requirement. And third is thinking that I am alone in this, right? A lot of students might think, okay, I'm alone in this. I have to do this alone, but that's not true. At every step, there will be people who will be willing to help you, right? You can reach out to your alumni, people on LinkedIn. Most of the time, people will be more than happy to help and will not say no. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've reached the end of this presentation. I'm sorry if I talked for too long, but what can I say? It's an important, passionate topic to me. And some end tips I would say is don't undermine yourself. Try. You'd lose nothing by trying. And I think a lot of you here like might be attending this session, and you might be thinking, I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know. I'm just attending it, but I was once in your position too. And I think the hardest step is trying. Like the first step is always the hardest. But once you begin, everything just, follows through on its own. So, yeah, I would say like, don't undermine yourself. don't think that you don't have a chance because you have as much of a chance as everyone else. Okay. And yeah, in the presentation, I also shared an email. So if you want, you can reach out to me if you have any questions later. And yeah, that's all. Thank you, guys. I hope you learned something from this session. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Yangdon. That was, I would say, really informative. And if it's okay with you, we'll share the slides right after with everyone who joined and who signed up. And the email as well will be sent to everyone who is part of this session. And this is recorded as well. So we'll also make that link available for anyone who just wants to review Yangdon presenting through. So those all will be ready. I know we're at 10, on my end, we have about 10 minutes per that hour, but we
Okay.
can still go on if needed and depending on the time. So first, I know like again, there's only 10 minutes. I'll just quickly say a few things and then I'll just quickly give the mic over to the audience really to ask questions. Honestly, I think a lot of things that Yangdun has shared does come to taking that initiative on your part going a little bit further than you might think is expected in the sense when it even comes to choosing the program, a lot of it is you just doing the research on the ground, learning more about what are you really interested in, and there may be a lot of reasons that inspire you to pursue a particular program. And whether it's your personal background, lived experiences, as well as volunteering opportunities, internships, professional experiences, or research with someone, right? Anything that might inspire you. So always be on the lookout for things that you want to take inspirations from. Look out for opportunities. And I think there are plenty. It's just going forward and being proactive. And even when it comes to the application and funding, I think one thing that stood out to me on doing you did really well throughout your process, it seemed like was asking never hurts. Really, I think to a certain extent, everyone wants to be helpful. If someone's asking, hey, how do I do this? Or hey, do you might know this and this? I think like you may know the entirety, but you may be able to refer to someone else who may know a subject or the answer to a question a lot better. So I would really emphasize anyone here just reaching out through an email to the school about the application if you have a certain question, or even if it's related to the IELTS, if you don't think that's something you are required to take, but you don't want to take. Similarly, with getting a fee waiver, again, asking never hurts. So I would highly recommend being proactive on that. And with regards to funding as well, a quick question, I'll just kind of revert it back to you, Yonder. I know you got into other five colleges. With regards to funding, did all the others end up providing a good funding that as you expected?
So I got partial scholarship from like some universities like UCD,
Mm.
and I think Glasgow gave me like a £5,000 scholarship. It's kind of weird because I applied to SOAS too, and I had applied for like a £5,000 scholarship,
Mm.
but I got rejected for a £5,000 SOAS scholarship, but I got a full scholarship at
Right,
Oxford,
right.
which is which is interesting to me because and I think it really comes down to like how passionate you are about a program.
Yeah,
Like, you know, if you're able to convey that in your application, it works out in your favor. You know, I think I think my desire, like my passion for this program was so high, I ended up getting the scholarship, which I think, yeah, I was really able to like, I think, convey the fact that I really want to do this program over all others, which is what helped me to get the funding, I believe.
sure thing. No, totally makes sense. Thank you for that. Um, okay. Um, I'll ask one question. I'll send it over I have a ton of questions, as you know, but I know we don't have time, so I'll have to pick one off my list. Okay, say for any student who is really early in their journey of pursuing a master's in Europe and here specifically at Oxford, what's one thing you wish you had known sooner, now having gone through the program, that would have maybe made it a little bit easier for you
Hmm.
or like navigating it?
Yeah. I would say now I don't know if it's very practical. It's kind of more rhetorical, but
Mm.
you want to bet on yourself 100% from the beginning. You know, you want to like you don't want to think that, oh, I'm not the kind of person who would get this. You know, you want to believe that I'm gonna get it. You know, like you want to bet on yourself 100% from the beginning, and you don't want to like doubt yourself. Because self-doubt is something that is so crippling. It consumes a lot of your time. And looking back, I think now I'm here. I know that I'm good enough to be here. But back then I didn't. And I needed like a lot of support, which I did get a lot of support from my mentors, from my parents, who told me that you can be here, you know.
Mhm.
But I think that like it was a bit lacking on like the intrinsic side, you know, that
Right.
intrinsic I guess um I don't know, that intrinsic, you know, willpower was a bit
Right.
lacking. Yeah, so I think I would say like bet on yourself 100% from the beginning.
For sure. I really appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording in 30 seconds. I'll just say this before we get to the Q&A, and that will be not recorded, so anyone can ask any questions. In a week, on the 23rd and 24th, we are doing a webinar with a panel of students from Ashoka and Tibetan specifically, Philparan, so who have gone to Ashoka University. So if you're interested, just be on the lookout for that, and they'll walk through the whole application and the admission cycle for Ashoka. So I'll just say that. So I'll start recording and then we'll tune into the Q&A. Anyone who has a question.